Welcome, history explorers. Today, we're about to journey into a world that never was, a world where the Axis powers won World War II. Imagine the cities, the empires, and the lives reshaped under a shadow of total domination. This is the story of what might have been. Imagine a world where the skies above London never lit up with the searchlights of the Royal Air Force, where the streets of Paris, Warsaw, and Moscow were not merely scarred by bombs, but were transformed into permanent symbols of Axis dominance, where the echoes of Winston Churchill's defiance never rallied a free world and instead were drowned out by the relentless march of Nazi and Imperial Japanese forces, a world where the Allies had faltered not in courage but in timing and circumstance, where the beaches of Normandy remained unconquered, the D-Day invasion either never conceived or crushed before it could unfold, and the vast machinery of war that was the Third Reich and the Empire of the Rising Sun extended unchecked across continents, shaping every aspect of life from politics to culture, from science to human morality. In this alternate reality, Adolf Hitler's vision of a 1,000-year Reich was not interrupted by the bombings of Hamburg and Dresden, nor curtailed by the Soviet push through Eastern Europe. Instead, the Nazi war machine perfected its methods, integrating conquered territories into a sprawling authoritarian state, implementing policies of control that went beyond what the world has ever witnessed. A meticulously organized society where fear, propaganda, and pseudoscience dictated the lives of millions, where technology and infrastructure served not the common good, but the relentless expansion of an empire based on racial hierarchy and unyielding oppression. Cities like London and New York became not centers of freedom, but outposts of resistance, hiding movements that struggled against impossible odds, while Berlin rose as the unchallenged capital of the New World Order, with monuments and streets glorifying the ideology of conquest and supremacy, and the arts and sciences, once instruments of human creativity and enlightenment, were harnessed to serve propaganda, military precision, and the glorification of power, fueling advances in rocketry, aviation, and medicine, but often at the cost of humanity and ethics, with experiments that crossed moral boundaries performed on unwilling subjects to push the boundaries of what science could achieve in service of the state. Across the Pacific, the Imperial Japanese Empire, having secured its dominance over East Asia and the Pacific Islands, transformed cities like Shanghai, Manila, and Singapore into showcases of military efficiency and imperial control, while local cultures were suppressed or absorbed, languages banned, traditions erased, and the populations either indoctrinated or subjugated, creating a tension between survival and identity that would shape generations under a regime where dissent equaled death and loyalty was measured in unwavering obedience. The United States denied its ability to project power into Europe and Asia as decisively as it did in our history, retreated into a fortified isolation, grappling with the psychological weight of a world where freedom was not the default and where democratic ideals were under siege, contemplating a future in which it must rebuild from within, while watching the Axis powers solidify their global network, forging alliances that seemed unbreakable. A world in which the atomic bomb, if ever developed, would be wielded not as a tool to end tyranny, but potentially as a weapon in a continuous struggle to assert dominance over resistant populations and rival powers, reshaping the balance of power in unprecedented ways. Imagine the streets of Paris, once the center of art and culture, transformed into a showcase of Nazi aesthetic, where murals celebrated conquest and heroic martyrdom in service of the Reich, cafes replaced with propaganda centers, and the Seine lined with banners of ideological dominance, while secret networks of underground resistance attempted to preserve fragments of human expression, smuggling literature, music, and art that had been outlawed, risking their lives for the faint hope that some form of human spirit could survive in a world bent entirely on domination and control. Across Europe, the Jewish populations and other groups targeted by the Nazi regime, instead of being liberated, faced an intensification of persecution, with ghettos expanded, camps modernized and hidden deep within conquered lands, and populations systematically exploited for labor in a world economy fully redirected towards sustaining a totalitarian war machine, where the question of morality became secondary to efficiency, and humanity itself was measured against the machinery of state power. In this alternate timeline, technological innovation accelerated in some areas as a result of unbridled militarization. Jet aircraft, guided missiles, and early computers were developed not in a collaborative spirit of progress, but as instruments of control, surveillance, and global dominance, creating a chilling vision of a modern world advanced in capability, yet profoundly regressive in its ethical and social dimensions, where human rights and freedoms were abstract concepts, discussed quietly in hidden corners by those who still dared to imagine an alternate future. Across oceans, the Japanese Empire extended its reach, establishing puppet governments in Australia, India, and even pushing toward the west coast of the Americas, implementing systems of administration designed to extract resources and suppress resistance, creating a dichotomy between modernized urban centers and devastated rural landscapes stripped bare to feed the war economy, while cultural assimilation programs sought to erase local identities, language, and traditions in favor of a homogenized imperial ideology, leaving a legacy of both technological marvels and profound human suffering, a reminder that progress without freedom can become the most sinister of all forces. In this shadowed reality, the social fabric of nations was redefined. Education became indoctrination, science became a weapon, and culture became propaganda. Yet amidst this vast machinery of oppression, pockets of defiance persisted. From hidden classrooms teaching banned knowledge to clandestine publications circulating underground, acts of courage and preservation that whispered that even in a world dominated by tyranny, the human spirit retained the capacity for hope, resistance, and imagination. Economies were reshaped entirely. The Axis-controlled world operated on a model of conquest-driven production, prioritizing military output, infrastructure for control, and exploitation of human and natural resources over innovation for quality of life, leaving the majority of the global population living under scarcity, fear, and authoritarian rule, while elite classes and government officials enjoyed unprecedented technological and scientific luxuries, creating staggering contrasts between rulers and the ruled, a hierarchy enforced by a pervasive security apparatus that monitored thoughts, speech, and action, leaving freedom as a relic of the past, a dangerous memory whispered only in secret. As decades passed in this alternate world, the geopolitical landscape shifted in ways difficult to imagine. Colonies never decolonized, regional cultures were erased, global trade routes redirected to serve the Axis economies, and resistance movements either crushed or forced into the shadows, developing clandestine networks that spanned continents, preparing for a future in which the oppressed might one day rise again, reminding us that even in the darkest times, the seeds of rebellion can take root, nurtured by memory, hope, and the innate human desire for liberty. Military strategy evolved not to protect citizens, but to project dominance, with armies and navies forever ready to quell uprisings or expand borders, and the constant presence of conflict became normalized, teaching generations that war, occupation, and control were the natural state of humanity, while diplomatic relations were reduced to negotiations of fear and submission, creating an unrelenting tension that suffused every interaction between nations. In this world, propaganda was elevated to an art form, blending film, literature, radio broadcasts, and later television into a continuous stream of messaging designed to shape thought, manipulate emotion, and maintain loyalty to a global ideology that left little room for individuality or critical thought, crafting a population whose worldview was meticulously curated from birth, where curiosity was permitted only within the confines set by the ruling powers, and any deviation met with swift and absolute retribution. Yet, even under such pervasive control, human resilience and the desire for freedom persisted, with underground networks, secret societies, and individuals risking life and liberty to preserve art, culture, and knowledge that the Axis powers sought to erase, creating a dual reality of oppression above and subtle rebellion below, a constant interplay between totalitarian power and the indomitable will of people to survive intellectually, spiritually, and morally. Imagine, too, the moral dilemmas of scientists, soldiers, and citizens caught within this world, forced to choose between survival and conscience, witnessing horrors that challenge their very understanding of humanity, navigating a society where collaboration could mean privilege but also complicity in unimaginable crimes, and where dissent could cost everything, leaving them to grapple with ethical questions that still haunt humanity today. What is the cost of peace under tyranny? How much freedom must be surrendered for survival? And how do we, generations removed, understand the choices of those trapped in the machinery of an alternate history that never was? As the decades roll on, this hypothetical Axis-dominated world presents a chilling tableau. Highly advanced yet morally bankrupt, technologically sophisticated yet socially regressive, administratively efficient yet spiritually desolate, with humanity's potential twisted into instruments of control, creating a haunting mirror of what might have been, a world where the absence of Allied victory created a continuous shadow over human liberty, and yet, within that shadow, stories of courage, resistance, and the undying hope for freedom remind us why history matters, why choices matter, and why the victory of the Allies in our timeline was not merely a political or military success, but a preservation of the essence of humanity itself, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit can endure, resist, and ultimately triumph. Thank you for joining us on this journey into an alternate history. If this exploration made you think, question, or imagine, subscribe and stay with us as we continue uncovering the stories that shaped our world and the ones that could have been. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering,